For this week, we are revisiting the middle length discourses, which we haven't done for a while. And I chose a discourse for us that is somewhat unusual, but given the events in the world, in society, what we've been seeing in the world, I think it's quite relevant. For some reason, when we embark on the spiritual path, we forget the role of the body. We forget the amount of work that could be done through the means of the body in the realm of spirituality or religious practice. In Buddhism, we have the patipada, the path of practice. For some reason, we have a tendency of making it be mostly about how we think, concepts, perceptions, as well as in association with emotions, of course. But somewhere along the line, something happens where we neglect the importance of how far we can actually move, how far we can advance in our practice through the means of the body. For that, we have in the Satipatthana and Mahasatipatthana suttas, both of which we've covered in the past, you see how the Buddha constantly talks about whether coming and going, getting up, sitting down, lying down, speaking, etc. Make sure you have full awareness, sampajanya. Now, of course, when we're sitting to practice meditation, practice, yes, there's also your awareness is there. However, most of the time, when we mention sampajanya, the full awareness, sometimes translated as clear comprehension, most of the time it entails our daily life, your relationship with the body. We're always on the move. We're dynamic. Even if we're very sedentary, we follow sedentary lifestyle, let's say, nevertheless, you have to turn over and reach for the remote, right? Click some buttons somewhere. Check your phone. Move your eyelashes. All these are movements. All these are triggers for us to drop back to the body. Of course, we have the breath. But it's very subtle compared to other motions that the body goes through. So all these are invitations to practice or to take the practice to another level. Instead of making it just be a heady process, something intellectual, something conceptual on one end. The other end would be, the other extreme would be doing the Simon Says method, which is majority of the time what happens in the world of religion. Oh, I'll just follow that. Yes, okay. That's where we get rites and rituals. That's where we get, going once a week to church or a few times a week to a temple or a mosque or something. In Buddhism, you do it every, aside from the weekly visits to the temple, you have also the Uposatha, you have new moon day, full moon day, etc., and the most, famous days of the year, and that's it. You go and you do your punya, merit-making actions, and that's it. Or, in addition to that, believing that Nibbana is something that waits for you over there, post-death. For some reason, it's always rosy. What will happen after? This is not unique to Buddhists or Buddhism, any particular part of Buddhism or lineage of Buddhism. It's not unique. You see it all across human history in different traditions. And this was happening at the time of the Buddha as well. For some reason, we think that things are very, very different than what we have now. And that is not the case. So today's sutta, I hope, will allow us to see that. The relevancy, as I mentioned, about some of the distortions of what we see in society, we'll see it in the sutta. So the sutta is, as I mentioned, from the Majjhima Nikāya, the middle length discourses. It is sutta number 57, MN 57. It is the Kukkuravatika Sutta. Kukkura basically is a dog. So it is from the Gahapati Vagga, the section on householder within the Majjhima Nikāya, middle length discourses. So this is called the Kukkuravatika Sutta, Majjhima Nikāya number 57. In English, it means the man who identified as a dog. In this world where we have a lot of, identifications being pushed down society's throat. I identify like this, he identifies like that, they. Meanwhile, the person is a singular. All this nonsense. Well, it's nothing new. We'll see here these distortions. So here we see a person, actually two people, that present to the Buddha. They come to ask a question. Apparently, they've been interested in knowing all the work that they've been doing. Will it amount to a higher rebirth, or, the rosy part two of life, meaning once they die at the end of life, will this work that they're putting pay off? And that's a very a good place to come from, meaning looking for accountability, looking for, okay, if I put this much work, am I going to get the result I want? It's very important. It's very economically savvy, you would say. It's very practical, and it's very responsible. That part, yes. Now, the problem was these two people, human beings, these two men that came to the Buddha to ask about, well, is this work that we're putting going to pay off? They were, in those days, religious practitioners. Religious practitioners in India, you have a variety. If you want to look at the insanities that are going on in the world today, as far as I mentioned, identifying as this, identifying as a, I don't know, a fungus, identifying as a kite, as all these nonsensical things, or a cat, a human being I'm referring to, identifying as these things. You will see these two characters show up. One of them is identifying as a bull or a cow, And the other one identifies himself as a dog. Now, it's not just something intellectual, conceptual. They're not just like a few sandwiches short of a picnic basket in their head, as they say. They live the life of a dog, one of them. The other one lives his life as a cow or a bull in this case. Lounging about, walking, eating, munching on grass, even though the human body is not designed, you need to have 4 different chambered stomachs to digest all that poison in the grass. So at least you would go through the motions. Sleep outside, sleep outdoors, be naked all the time, make the sound of a cow or the sound of a dog or barking. So I'm getting into kind of like too many specifics, one might say. However, I find it necessary to place ourselves in that scene instead of just taking it, as most of the time people do when they read a discourse or sutta or hear about it. We don't really take part in the sutta, and that's wrong. That's I think it's a shame. So that's why I want to present as 360 of a view as what was going on, and it wasn't so different than what we have seen in the world these last few years. But anyhow, in society, I mean. So again, this is Majjhima Nikāya 57, Kukkuravatika Sutta, the man who identified as a dog. Let's begin. I have personally heard this. One day, while the Blessed One was traveling through the Kolian region, he came upon an area near a village by the name of Halidavasana, where he decided to reside for a while. During that time, there was a man named Punna, a Kolian, who was living naked, identifying himself as a bull, while engaging in mimicking the behavior of a bull. Now, this Punna lived with his friend Seniya, who in turn was also living naked, identifying himself as a dog, while engaging in mimicking the behavior of a dog. So, this was part of a religious practice which had developed, because if you're groping in the dark, when there's no proper Dhamma, when it's basically the blind leading the blind, you have many people who will do anything, whatever it takes, as the saying goes, to get the reward. That's the key. You have countless people who earn a living, and then they know that they have to give a portion of that, let's say 10% to their church, to their temple, to their mosque, whatever. You have people who go through certain ritualistic expected from them traditional mores and things that they have to do simply because they were told that this would happen. And usually what that meant was something good will come out of it at the end, over there, later. And usually, given the human condition, especially the eternalistic view that there is a soul, that it doesn't die, so it only transmigrates, something like that, what we're talking about is another birth, and usually it's better than this. You see this in all religions pretty much. If you do this, if you can put up with this much torture, then you're going to find paradise over there. So let's see. But then, on hearing that the Blessed One was living nearby, both Punna and his friend Seniya went and approached the teacher, eager to ask some questions. We'll find out now the questions, the whole point. Having approached, Punna greeted the Blessed One by showing his respect and bowing to the teacher. He then went and sat to one side. while Senya, being more reserved, respectfully exchanged friendly greetings with the Blessed One, and then went and sat to one side, curling up as if he was a dog. So he found a corner, he sat, laid there. The other one was more respectful, bowed. He didn't. Senya didn't. Then Punna, the Kolyan, who identified himself as a bull, addressed the Blessed One by saying, Bhante, Senya here. So he's now turning the attention to his friend. The one, Senya, living naked and identifying himself as a dog, does something that is very difficult for many to do. He only eats food that is tossed at him once it's on the floor. He has been dedicated to this lifestyle of his for quite a long time now, living and behaving like a dog in all that he does in his conduct. Could you please tell us about his next birth? You see the catch now? That's the work that they're doing. What is it for? We are wondering as to where he will be reborn once he dies at the end of this life. And the Blessed One replied, let that question be and just drop the whole subject, Punna. Please do not ask me that question. This is the Buddha saying. So when the Buddha, you have examples, several examples like this throughout the suttas, in different suttas, different Nikāyas, where the Buddha categorically is telling the person, don't ask me this. Usually, if not always, it's because whatever the Buddha is about to say will crush the person. Remember, the Buddha always spoke with few, criteria being met with each of his utterances. Meaning, is there metta? Is it good for the person? Is it Dhamma? In his case, it was always Dhamma, of course. But these are the instructions he gave us too whenever we speak. So the Buddha knows that this, whatever he's about to say, will crush the person. Why? Because the person is definitely dedicated to this lifestyle. He has hopes. So the Buddha chooses not to say anything, and he's saying, no, let's just drop the subject, Punna. However, Punna kept insisting to get an answer and asked his question a second time. Bhante, Senya here, the one living naked and identifying himself as a dog, does something that is very difficult for many to do. He only eats food that is tossed at him once it's on the floor. And if you know or seen dogs or kept dogs, they also will eat, unfortunately, hate to say this, but if you know already, you know, they eat their own excrement at times. And there are people who do that, unfortunately. It's a deranged way of thinking, deranged way of living, but that's what it is. I remember when I was in KL, one time a student of mine said, oh, Bhante, have you ever heard about these things called furries? I said, I'm sorry. And she said, maybe you need to look into that. And I said, what is it? And apparently, and unfortunately or strangely enough, this has been something that I have been hearing about, seeing, witnessing, mostly happen in the Anglo-Saxon world or English-speaking world. For some reason, I don't know what the connection is, but schools and societies, institutions have been accepting, welcoming, tolerating, encouraging children and people to act and behave and believe that they are canines, cats, grown people, children. So the mentioning of this was in relation to a school in Canada that had told one of the custodians to make up a small space for like a sandbox for this young little girl who thought or believed that she was a cat in Canada. And the man was saying, I'm sorry, clean up the bathroom, the girl's bathroom, plus put a sandbox, plus take care of that. This is ridiculous. But this is one simple example of a debacle that's going on in the world. So imagine here Senia catching his food. So you can imagine the taunting that would happen. Here you have a grown man, naked. Let's say a parent, mother and child walking, and he's naked. Talk about indecent exposure. The child sees this as like, what is? They mock him. So there's also that degradation going on. Oh, toss him this thing, Johnny. And so they toss that to him, and he'll behave like a dog. It's beyond grotesque. It's beyond stupid. But there's an outcome. That's what human beings are capable of doing. We can attain Buddhahood as human beings. But on the other hand, we can also behave like that. Why? Because somebody had told us, if you do that, you will get a higher rebirth. Senia is just one example, of course. You just go around your block, you see a lot of people doing so many idiotic things for a cause. Meanwhile, life is being sacrificed. Here's a man who's sacrificing his life for a better rebirth. Meanwhile, he has one. He has a life already. So, could you please tell us about his next birth? We are wondering as to where he will be reborn, Bhante, once he dies at the end of his life. And for the second time, the Blessed One replied, let that question be. And just drop the whole subject, Punna. Please don't ask me that question. So, needless to say, he asks again. And traditionally, it was known that if the Buddha refused to answer a question, you had to ask 3 times. And if there's a third time that you asked, unless some unusual reason, but usually the Buddha would answer after the 3rd time. I don't know if this was traditionally only found within Buddhism. I have never seen anything that says it was or it wasn't. So let's presume that it was normally accepted everywhere. So this man is asking the 3rd time, perhaps knowing or hoping that the Buddha, okay, he can't refuse me after the 3rd time. Then the Blessed One spoke after the 3rd time by addressing Punna. Well, Punna, seeing that in your eagerness to get an answer, you keep asking me a question that I tried telling you not to ask, I will now provide you with my reply. Punna, if a person really dedicates himself fully and without interruptions to living naked like a dog, always identifying himself as a dog, to the point where he engages in the habitual patterns and the very behavior and conduct of a dog, thinking and acting as a dog in all his mannerisms constantly, then when this body of his breaks down, right after his death, he will be reborn as a real dog in the company of other dogs. This is a fact, despite what such a person might like to believe or think, such as, by dedicating myself to living like a naked dog, behaving and identifying myself as a dog, may I be granted rebirth into the realm of the devas and gods, as a reward for my dedicated effort in being and living like a dog. Therefore, to hold on to such hopes in his heart is none other than holding on to wrong view, and not much else. Such a big sacrifice. Earlier, I began this talk about by saying how important it is for us to connect with the body. Here is a body, here's a person, Senia, the one identifying himself as a dog. He has a body. Without the body, you cannot attain freedom, emancipation. You cannot attain freedom from suffering without the body. That's where the Buddha, as Siddhartha Gautama, in his 6.5 years of torture, self-torture, in pursuit of freedom from suffering, he realized that he had pushed his body to the breaking point. And he realized that, listen, this is not, that's it. Nobody's ever come this far and still made it. I have, but if I take one more step, I'm going to die. If I do this for one extra minute, I will die. He was fainting left and right. He didn't have energy to even open his eyelids. He was so weak, he had starved himself. Not just fasting, he had starved himself. Tortured himself. What is this? He says, this is wrong. So the importance of taking care of the body, the body, so that it allows us to cross the flood of passions. You cannot do that without a body. You need the body to travel. You need the body to take care of, well, to learn through these different experiences. You need the body for the satipatthana. I was mentioning the satipatthana. You need the body to practice sati and sampajanya. So what a wasted opportunity here with Senia. Let's see what the Buddha says next. Now, Punna, do know this as well. Anyone who holds on to such wrong views or lives his life with wrong view can expect himself to be reborn into one of two possible destinations, which will be waiting for him at the moment of his death, being immediately deposited either into the hell realms or being reborn into the animal realm and nowhere else. So there's an option C. There's no like, well, let's see. No, the Buddha is giving us a definitive two possible outcomes. That's it. No third. I know we live in this society in the world today where we think we have options, we have choices. You know, you have two candidates. Oh, yes, you can choose whichever one you want between these two. What does that mean? What if neither of them are my choice? Like, I don't have a choice then. Well, yeah, that's but you can choose. No, I can't, because these are not who I want. These are not the objects that I want to purchase. You either have this or you have this. But in this case, given the whole lifetime that a person has spent doing something based on wrong view, the outcome is impossible for it to somehow turn better or come out as the result of right view, having had right view. There's no right view here. What one feels, that's what one thinks about. What one perceives, that's what one continues to mentally proliferate. And it's a vicious cycle. You're stuck there. Nothing from the outside is going to come in and change the whole mechanism. It's like those people who go ahead and kill others, murder in the name of religion, and believing that when they die, they're going to go to heaven. Something where there's delightful, experiences waiting for them. It's so diluted. People would go to war, chanting war cries, this and that, and they think that by cutting off someone, killing someone, torturing others, don't worry, they're not like us, so we're going to go to a better place. No, this is good. In fact, it's a one-way ticket to heaven. This is where the importance of kamma comes in. So this talk is reintroducing us to the role of intentional action. Kamma is that, intentional action. Not just any action, but intentionally committed actions. Here is a man, Senia, by the name of Senia, living like a dog, thinking himself as a dog, because he has been told by someone, some teacher. By the way, to this day, these trends exist in India and other places, perhaps, where it is, because it's so out of this world, otherworldly, people have a liking to it and say, oh, maybe there is something to this, because there aren't that many people going around acting like a dog, scratching themselves with their toes, groan. So action can be committed while you are alive. You have the potential there to still make choices. Intention can be applied in the form of a deed you commit through your thoughts, speech, or bodily action. By the way, the devas also making intentional actions. You don't make intentional actions when you're in the hell realm, by the way. You are making intentional actions when you're an animal, by the way. And that's why many animals who are stuck as a predator, let's say a snake or an eagle or a wolf or a lion, they're going to be stuck there in that realm for a long time. Why? Because they keep breaking precept. Why? Because they at least break the first precept. They harm and kill, even though it's for sustenance, but they will kill. The fox will go after a rabbit. The eagle will go after a snake. The snake will go after other. Basically, they're carnivores. That's why they're stuck there, including a chicken, for example. A chicken is a carnivore. Omnivore, some might say too. But so here, the action that the person is committing will result in an adequate, suitable match of an outcome. So this person is living in wrong view. And here is the important part to remember. When a person has wrong view, they're not going to get a rebirth into even a human realm, let alone a deva realm, a heavenly realm. We're talking, if there is wrong view, chances are it will be any one of the lower realms. The worst is the hell realms. Maybe an upgrade would be, the animal realm in this case. Not that maybe it is a much better rebirth than hell realm, but depending on the level of wrong view and how much they've committed in their lives to that wrong view, that'll be the outcome. So when one fully and with dedication commits to living naked like a dog, identifying himself as and behaving like a dog, the only thing he will achieve will be rebirth into the animal realm as an actual dog. But if for some reason he fails in that too, then the only other destination waiting for him at death will be the hell realms and nowhere else. It's sad that today in the Buddhist world, people don't talk about the hell realms as often as they should. Dhamma talks don't include that. It's not the in thing. We don't want to give the facts. These are facts. If the person is engaging in wrong view, actions that are based on wrong view, the Buddha, again, countless suttas, just the ones I've translated, that I've come across, the Buddha is clearly is saying there are these realms. So why shouldn't we really study those as well instead of just learning about the breath meditation, anapanasati? Everybody wants to do the satipatthana or anapanasati or think about the devas, but nobody wants to talk about the lower realms. We have to put ourselves face to face. A few years ago, I gave the Devaduta Sutta. the divine messengers. That's a good sutta to go to and read, to shock us from our delusion, living in this world in this time period. So here we have Senia living like a dog, behaving like a dog, identifying as a dog, but it could be any one of us behaving and thinking that we are something that we're not, including a practitioner in this path. If you're not following the practice, but you're doing something else, so you're lying to yourself. Why? Because you don't have that connection. There's a disconnect between you and the body. There's a disconnect between what you think you're doing, you're practicing, versus what you are truly practicing. And that's also asking for trouble, because once the moment of death arrives and the body breaks down, we cannot anticipate there to be something wonderful waiting for us if we have lived with wrong view. That's why wrong view is not something passive. It's benign. It's a benign cancer. Don't worry about that. No, it's not like that. Wrong view is the essence of suffering, is at the core of suffering, is the best tool for Mara. Wrong view. That's why the Buddha, to ameliorate that situation, he gave us the very first of the Noble Eightfold Path is what? Samadhi, the remedy, the antidote to wrong view. But what do we have today? Just like in the case of the Paticca the dependent or arising principles, people just chant it, people just repeat it without understanding it. Same way with the Noble Eightfold Path. They can list all the 8 beautifully. But what is right view? You ask them, they have no clue when it comes to their lives. And the Dhamma has to do with one's life. At least Senia is actually living an authentic life of a dog. How many of us are actually doing that? To really live it, dedicate oneself. Many of us aren't even doing that. So that's like, kudos to Senia. Having carefully listened to the Blessed One's reply, Senia, who was sitting there curled up like a dog, suddenly became sad and started crying. Then, while addressing Punna once again, the Blessed One said, "See, Punna, did I not inform you earlier? Let that question be and just drop the whole subject, Punna. Please don't ask me that question." Basically, the Buddha is saying, we just, he's now crying. I told you, don't force me to give you the answer to that question of yours. But then Senia, the one who identified himself as a dog, addressed the Blessed One by saying, "Bhante, I am not crying over the words I heard spoken by the Blessed One. I am crying over the fact that Punna here thinks of himself to be a bull." So now he's turning the, tables on his friend. After all, he lives dedicated to this lifestyle of a bull for quite a long time now, living and behaving like a bull in all that he does in his conduct. Could you please tell us as to the destination of his next birth? Where will he be reborn once he dies at the end of this life? So let's hear his response. And the Blessed One replied, "Let that question be and just drop this whole subject, Senia. Please do not ask me that question." Of course, this will repeat because, we see, however, Senia kept on insisting to get an answer, raising his question a second time. By the way, I'm paraphrasing these sections because in this discourse, in this exploration that we're doing here, we don't have to repeat the whole thing, but it's done fully, repetitions, all of them are there, and it's all on PDF on the website. Please go and read them. Every single one of these suttas. I highly encourage you to read them a few times. So I'll skip over this part because it's a repetition, as I said. And for a second time, the Blessed One says, "Let that question be." And for a third time, Senia insists on getting an answer. And then the Blessed One says, Then the Blessed One spoke while addressing Sanya. Well, Sanya, seeing that in your eagerness to get an answer, you keep asking me a question that I encourage you not to ask, I will now go ahead and provide you with my reply. Sanya, if a person commits fully and without interruptions to living naked like a bull, always identifying himself as a bull, to the point where he engages in the habitual patterns and the very behavior of a bull, thinking and acting as a bull in all his mannerism, non-stop, then when this body of his breaks down right after his death, he will be reborn as a real bull in the company of cows and bulls. Yes, this is a fact, despite what he might want to believe or think, such as, by dedicating myself to living like a naked bull, behaving and identifying myself as a bull, may I be granted rebirth into the realm of the devas and gods, as a reward for my dedicated effort in being and living like a bull. For us, these images might seem very grotesque or even childish, but we do this type of a thinking, we follow this kind of type of a process mentally throughout our lives. We do certain things, but we are anticipating something else, completely different. So we need to also see ourselves in these examples, these two examples of Sanya and Punna. You might not go around walking around naked as a pretending to be a cow or a bull or a dog, but it doesn't have to be visibly observable like that. As to the discrepancy between what you're doing and what you believe or want to happen to you. A similar thing happens with individuals when they want to, let's say, practice metta, loving kindness meditation. After some time, they come back and they say, Bhante, I want to give metta, but I can't because I hate the person. They might start with themselves. They're like, wow, I'm sending it. It's going well over there. It's like I'm sending it to that person. It's beautiful. It's over there. Like, yeah, I love the environment. I love the animals over there. I'm sending love to those people. Yeah, but what about you? Oh, I can't stand myself. Well, I hate to break it to you, but all those were wishful thinking because none of them actually worked. You were telling yourself lies. Why? Because the essence, the basic foundation isn't there. It's like somebody who wants to speak another language without learning anything about the language. Here's what they're saying, and he starts thinking, oh, that's gibberish, so I'll speak gibberish with them. And he or she will start speaking gibberish, but it's the others who speak that language, their native language, they're going to look at him. It's like, what's... But the person believes that they are actually communicating in their language. That's how nonsensical this is. That's why right view is missing in the world. People aren't observing. There's the blind leading the blind. People are not stopping this person who's acting like, who's saying, well, I identify as when they're a man, I identify as a woman, or a woman who's identifying as a man. Who cares what you want to identify as? The fact remains, biology doesn't lie. It has a head start by a few billion years. Who cares what you want? Don't worry, wait your time. Your time will come. You want to be a woman? Fine. In time, if you have good merits, if you have good, you've done your precepts, you might be born as a human again. And because you have the desire to be a woman, you'll be a woman, no problem. Same thing for a man, somebody wants to be a man when they're not. But now you're born in this body because of your attachments, you being shrouded and blinded by ignorance and tied up, bound up tightly with the fetters of craving. That's why you're here in this human body. Now, deal with it fulfill your task, do the best you can, and stop with all this nonsense. As I identify as this, I identify as a chalk, as a door. We need wisdom in today's world. We don't have enough of it. Fortunately, the Buddha is coming through with the discourses, 2,600 years of time, and he's still talking to us sense, if people listen. Then Punna, who was carefully listening to the Blessed One's reply, suddenly burst into tears. And the Blessed One addressed Senya by saying, "See, Senya, didn't I not inform you earlier? Let that question be and just drop the whole subject, Senya." Then Punna, the Kolian, who identified himself as a bull, addressed the Blessed One and said, "Bhante, I'm not crying over the words I just heard spoken by the Blessed One. However, I am crying over the fact that even though I dedicated myself all these years to living and practicing the lifestyle of a naked bull, now I am in the presence of the Blessed One, who I am quite certain will teach me how to abandon that lifestyle entirely." This is where the sutta is now guiding us towards something that will really help them, other than the shock that the Buddha gave them. Similarly, Bhante, I am also glad that here my friend Senya is getting the same opportunity to also abandon his own lifestyle of behaving like a naked dog. To be able to walk away from something that you dedicated yourself wholeheartedly to requires courage, to say the least. How many of us are ready to do a 90-degree turn or a 180 turn over things that we, as I said, really gave it all for such a long time? Can you do that? I know individuals who, after many years in academia, pursuing a certain degree, even in PhD programs, or studying law, after so much they spent money, this, that, time, commitments, right at the tail end, maybe one semester is left, one quarter is left of the academic year, and they say, "No, it's not, I don't want to do it." And their grades were good. So they're not copping out. It's not a cowardly act, basically. It takes guts. How many of us can do that at the drop of a hat? When we see, however, it has to be done when there is the introduction of wisdom, a discerning insight. Oh, I was on the wrong. It's like when I used to drive in Los Angeles, in America, especially in the beginning, when you realize that you're on the wrong freeway, you don't continue on the wrong freeway. I mean, when we say this, we laugh. Like, of course, it's like, but we live our lives in relationships that we know is the wrong freeway. We commit ourselves to entire careers, jobs, when we know that it doesn't speak to us. It's the wrong freeway. We are married to, involved with someone, as I said, a job, a position, a role we're playing somehow, that is the wrong freeway. But we continue to, well, I've committed enough, it's like, how many years do you think you still have in this body? Because remember, if you are not living truthfully as in, is this really what your heart seeks? Is this really what you want? Is this what your future is about? What you're doing now? It has to be. But if it's not, you are living a lie. Whether it's an actual relationship with someone, a job, a career, and you've dedicated yourself, you have decades still. It could be a job that you're doing, a 9 to 5 job, so to make ends meet, or to, you know, that this is a transition. That's a different case altogether. But if you're dedicated, I mean, relationship, it's a big deal. I've seen people for decades living with someone, and they complain about this person, and they go back to the person. Oh, once the kids grow up, you know, they're adults, then I'm going to divorce, for example. Meanwhile, they're like a cat and dog inside the house, as if the kids don't see that growing up. So they're spreading toxins into the minds and hearts of their children as they're waiting for them to grow up so that one day they will walk away. Well, guess what? The years came and gone. The kids became adults. They have their own kids, and these people did not leave each other. Living lies, unhappy, deceptive to themselves. There's no wisdom at all. There's no courage at all. Cowardly, because you have to seek happiness. Here you have punna, here you have sanya, especially through punna. It's saying, I'm so happy that Bhante, you're here. You're going to guide us now out of this mess. When a person says that, that means they have decided to, yes, Bhante, please show us. We don't want to be the blind, following the blind anymore. Okay? Please show us what to do. You just gave us the right information. We're ready to go. Where do we sign? In that case, Punna, the Blessed One continues saying, listen carefully and attend closely to what I shall say to you both. Yes, Bhante, Punna replied, and the Blessed One continued speaking. Punna, there are these 4 actions that I declare, which I have personally realized for myself with direct understanding through higher knowledge. Now, what are these 4? Punna, there are dark actions that produce dark results. There are bright actions that produce bright results. There are dark and bright actions that produce both dark and bright results. And there are actions that are neither dark nor bright, that produce neither dark nor bright results, but instead bring about the destruction of all actions as their consequence. So those are the 4 types of actions he's declaring in a nutshell. And what punna are dark actions that produce dark results? You can think of them, well, this will be actually clarifying as let's go on. Here, punna, someone intentionally engages in evil and harmful bodily actions. He intentionally engages in evil and harmful verbal actions in his communication. And he intentionally engages in evil and harmful mental actions by causing harm through his thinking. So, all 3 levels of one's actions. In Jainism, for example, the emphasis is on the physical action. In Buddhism, the way Lord Buddha taught, we start with the mind. Actions begin in the mind. And then they manifest through words, communication, how you speak to yourself, how you speak to others. And lastly, the physical action. So, okay, let's go continue. Now, as a consequence, after death, such a person is immediately reborn into a world that is harmful, where situations and other beings cause him sorrow and pain exclusively, where the touches that make contact with him throughout his sensory impingement are exclusively those of affliction and pain. Thus, he dwells experiencing one painful affliction after another, from all sides, much like what those beings born into the hell realms have to face. Punna, this is what is meant by dark actions that produce dark results. This is very important to understand the law of kamma. It's a very vast topic, kamma itself, the intentional actions, the way it's taught by the Buddha, of course. But to simplify, because over the years many people have asked, we wonder, right? When we come to the Dhamma, what is a kamma? Like, usually we have so many misconceptions, but this is a good place to start to understand the bundles, the 4 types of bundles. One of them is this. Evil actions or dark actions will produce evil results. You're not going to get an ostrich egg out of a chicken. Okay? But that's what we do. Because, hey, I like to have that. No, it doesn't work. You go and stand under a mango tree, you're going to get hopefully it's a fruit-giving mango tree. It will give you a mango. It won't give you a fig. It won't give you cherries. It won't give you a banana. It will give you a mango. So the action is reflective. So if the person is living with hatred in their hearts, and today we have a lot of that in society, people want to kill each other. People want to harm each other in so many ways. And then they go home and they're so lovey-dovey, this and that. They go to church, they go to mosque, they go to their temples, synagogues, and they're like, oh yes, God, 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 God. What about that hatred? It didn't stop there outside your religious, campground. It's in your heart. That's where you're going to end up. If you cause pain, the Buddha says, if you take up swords and weapons and you wish harm, killing, murder on someone else, that sword will come at you. You will be cut down by that sword, by a sword. So the action will create its reaction, if you will. It's inevitable. And what actions, Punna, are bright actions that produce bright results? Here, Punna, someone intentionally engages in beneficial and non-harmful bodily actions. Similarly, he intentionally engages in beneficial and non-harmful verbal actions in his communication. And he intentionally engages in beneficial and non-harmful mental actions through his thinking. So this is the opposite. That's why it's called the bright action that produces bright results. Now, as a consequence, after death, such a person is immediately reborn into a pleasure-filled world, where the circumstances he is surrounded by, as well as those beings around him, cause him much joy and pleasure, exclusively, where the touches that make contact with him throughout his sensory impingement are exclusively those of joy. Thus, he dwells experiencing delightful happiness from all sides, much like what the Subhakinha Devas experience in their heavenly realm, exclusively. This, Punna, is what is meant by bright actions that produce bright results. These are the Subhakinha Devas are on a higher level. There's different levels in Buddhism, cosmology. Because you have at a lower level devas where they experience both pain and pleasure, more pleasure than pain, but nevertheless pain. But in this case, a bright action that produces bright result is a case where you don't even have that possibility. It's very rare, if at all. And what are those dark and bright actions, Punna, which produce both dark and bright results? Here, Punna, someone intentionally engages in both harmful and beneficial bodily actions. He intentionally engages in both harmful and beneficial verbal actions through his communication. And he intentionally engages in both harmful and beneficial mental actions through his thinking. Now, as a consequence, after death, such a person is immediately reborn into a world where the circumstances he is surrounded by, as well as those beings around him, cause him harm at times and pleasure at other times, where the touches that make contact with him throughout his sensory impingement are a constant blend of experiences that carry both painful afflictions as well as those that include pleasure or happiness, much like those human beings living in the world, or some of the devas in certain heavenly realms, or those reborn into one of the less miserable lower realms. Less miserable could be a dog, could be a cat, but a cat or a dog or a giraffe or an elephant that's got plenty of food, resources, shelter, is not in danger, lives in an area where there's comfort all around. There's no threats. They're well taken care of, basically. But at other times, you have a fox come in, if you're a chicken, let's say, everything was beautiful, but then all of a sudden the fox comes in, or another animal, and marauds and kills one or two of your babies, or your friend, or even you get harmed. But it was beautiful, it was heavenly, and so it's a mixture. Majority of the time, well, at least recent times, you see this a lot in people's choices, in people's, we have a blend, basically. We live in a world where there's more of a blend. Of course, there are exceptions where you see individuals who constantly go from bad to worse, from worse to worst. And that didn't happen because there's a unjust, unfair deity, a God figure, overlord somewhere that is making them, just because those things happen to them. No, it's just one's own kamma, the results of which are now landing because now he has a body, she has a body to deal with all that they've done. So whatever we face are, most of the time, this is another thing. There's a sutta in the Samyutta Nikāya, under the heading of, in the group of sutta that are called New and Old, where the Buddha, there's a sutta under that name as well, the New and the Old. He says, Bhikkhus, I will teach you kamma that is new, I will teach you kamma that is old. What is old kamma? Look at your hand. Look at your fingers. When you look in the mirror, the eyes you see looking back at you, that is old kamma. The face you have, the body you have, old kamma. So what you have is old kamma, the Buddha says in that sutta. What you have, what you own, in a sense. The color of your skin, your nose, your mouth, maybe proclivities to, or vulnerabilities to, susceptibilities to illnesses and things like that, or good health, the opposite of that. That's old kamma. What you have already done. So now you are in possession of those consequences, if you will. Now, what you do with these things that are old kamma is the new kamma, the Buddha says. How you use that, how you use what you have, what you saw, the eyes, how you use your eyes, how you're using the eyes is the new kamma. You see the difference? This is crucial for us to understand, that you have such an authority, such a power to use, and not to be using sati, and instead using delusion and wrong view. It's a debacle. What a wasted life. What a wasted opportunity. Who knows how much you've struggled to gain this body? That's why the Buddha kept on saying the human body is so rare to have as your old kamma. So it's worth to write home about, It's incredibly valuable, especially being reborn as a human at a time where we have the Dhamma, where we have teachings that are not wrong teachings, meaning we're not going around naked and pretending to be a dog or a cow or a peacock. We are learning the Dhamma here. That means we have a brain to understand, to process, to be curious. So how you use the brain, that's your new kamma. something to really ponder. And what are those actions, Punna, that are neither dark nor bright? Actions that produce neither dark nor bright results, but instead bring about the destruction of actions as their consequence. Here, Punna, someone makes the intention to put an end to all dark actions with dark results. In addition, he makes the intention to put an end to all bright actions with bright results as well. Such a person also makes the intention to put an end to all dark and bright actions combined, those that produce both dark and bright results. Now, as a consequence, what results from such intentionally lived actions is the very destruction of actions themselves. And that's what's so beautiful about this path, which you don't find in any other religion at all. And we have to say it like it is, instead of copying around, about and just, no, we have to say the truth. We have to speak the truth, unafraid. We might offend somebody. The truth shines. There's few lights, sources of luminance the Buddha talks about. In the Anguttara Nikāya, he says, sources of light. He says, there's the sun, there's the moon, there's fire, and there's the fire of wisdom, the light of wisdom. And out of these four, he says, the light of wisdom is supreme because it can never be hidden. Sun, you can hide behind thick, thick, thick clouds. The moon, sometimes it's there in the month, sometimes it's not. Fire, the same. You don't add fuel, gone. You turn your back to the fire, you can't see the fire. You can't do that with wisdom. It's always there. And the Dhamma has that to give us the potentiality for us to gain wisdom. Once you do have it, then it becomes directly experienced knowledge. It's no longer knowledge, it's a higher wisdom. How could you hide that? How could you not speak the truth in your heart then? Therefore, Punna, these are the dark actions that produce dark results, the bright actions that produce bright results, the dark and bright actions that produce both dark and bright results, and those actions that are neither dark nor bright, that produce neither dark nor bright results, but instead bring about the destruction of all actions as their consequence. He's talking about the Arahant, emancipation, extinction. We have to be comfortable with that term, by the way, because many people have turned Nibbana into an otherworldly, other state that you enter, almost like a Judeo-Christian, Islamic type of a paradise somewhere over there after you die or after you attain, where the Buddha and the whole gang of Arahants hang out and just be. There's no such thing. The whole thing is a ludicrous idea. The Buddha completely shunned that notion. But the commentaries, they've introduced that. It belittles the depth of the Dhamma to think of Nibbana in those terms. Instead, here the Buddha gives us a healthier way of looking at what happens. You are eliminating action as such. And that's one of the things that happens to an Arahant. They no longer add more kamma after Arahantship. They are alive. They breathe like you and I. But they do not accumulate new kamma. They're done. The sankharas are gone for them. Why? Because there is no delusion at the bottom. Remember, I said it's the foundation for samsara, for suffering. It's no longer there. That's where Nibbana comes in. There's no more suffering. There is physical suffering, but that's unavoidable because that's their old kamma. Remember what they have? Their old kamma. What you have is your old kamma. You're walking with the luggages of yesterday's kamma. That's your body. Those are your eyes. Punna, these are the four actions that I now again declare, which I have personally realized for myself with direct understanding through higher knowledge. Then, When the Blessed One had just finished speaking these words, Punna, the Kolian, who had identified himself as a bull, made this utterance. It is excellent, Bhante. It is marvelous, Bhante. The Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear to me in many ways. I feel as though the Blessed One has turned upright what was overturned, revealing what was hidden by showing the correct path to someone who was lost. Boy, were they lost, right? Acting like a cow, grown man, naked. He continues, much like bringing a lit oil lamp into the darkness for all those with eyesight to see. Bhante, I go for refuge to the Blessed One, to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of Bhikkhus. May the Blessed One accept me as one of his lay disciples who has taken refuge in him as my teacher from today until the end of my life. So he became, he left that lifestyle and he took the 3 refuges. So he became an upasaka. Then Saniya, the one who had identified himself as a dog, also spoke by addressing the Blessed One. It is excellent, Bhante. It is marvelous, Bhante. The Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear to me in many ways. I feel as though the Blessed One has turned upright what was overturned. So something that was upside down. This is a term that we hear, we've seen repeated countless times throughout the suttas. It's a way of like you receive the Dhamma and it's so enlightening, illuminating that the person can't help but have an utterance of theirs to show the Buddha it's well received, it's done, it has an impact on me, and this is how it feels. Revealing what was hidden by showing the correct path to someone who was lost, much like bringing a lit oil lamp into the darkness for all those with eyesight to see. Bhante, I go for refuge to the Blessed One, to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of Bhikkhus. Bhante, I also request the going forth in your presence, so that I may lead the holy life in full. Therefore, I also request to receive the higher ordination. So now he wants to go all the way, going forth. And the Blessed One said, Saniya, whoever formerly has received ordination in another religious tradition, hence a follower of some other creed, on wishing to receive admission and the higher ordination in this Dhamma and discipline, must remain on probation for a period of 4 months. In those days, it was 4 months. Because if you have been a follower of a different tenet, a different belief system, a different religion, if you will, you can't just drop all that unless the person becomes an Arahant or attains to the first level of awakening, Sotapanna, where there's that doubt completely drops. So the Dhamma is the Dhamma. There's no other Dhamma for you. That's the big aha moment. You can never go back when you realize truth. You can never go to a lie. But not everyone who came and asked for admission, and especially the high ordination, was on that level. So the Sangha, of course, Lord Buddha decided that it's better to give a time period, a probationary time period, for the bhikkhus to hear this person when they talk with them. Is some of the old stuff that they believed seeping through and now interpreting the Dhamma through that language? Because you do have examples of this in many cases, like Sati, son of the fisherman, Mahatanha son. We'll go over it one day. And you have other examples like Yamaka, Venerable Yamaka, who brought in their Brahmanic ways of thinking. But they were now bhikkhus, so they were then called to the Buddha so that they could be asked and questioned and then clarified with them to be taught the Dhamma proper. And in some cases, some of them left because, well, that's how I believe. I believe in a soul. Well, you can't believe in a soul and be a Buddhist, okay? You can't believe in a being, a self, that keeps transmigrating from life to life. as you see in Tibetan Buddhism and others, Tantrayana. That's not Buddhism. That's a different version of it, which is a lot of Hinduism there. Soul theory is there, which doesn't work with Buddhism, but we accept it as Buddhism, unfortunately. Well, many people do, because they don't know the Dhamma. What is Dhamma? What is not? Dhamma is not the robes or the bald head and, taking the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and that's the end of the story. No. What did the Buddha teach? So during those 4 probationary months, the monks would see whether this person is a good candidate, and then they would decide, and they say, yeah, he did make a change. And then they would agree, and then, with a vote, and then they would go or Lord Buddha, if he was there, he would say, yes, he's now able to be ordained. And then this is the part that refers to that. However, Seniya, in this matter, I do see individual differences of personalities and recognize you as an exception. So even though that is the rule for 4 months, the Buddha is saying, but in your case, I can see, because the Buddha, as some of his senior students had, the ability to see the heart, the mind, to see where they are. Truly, they could see it better than they could themselves. So the Buddha saw that he really made the transition. Usually what that means is that the person has attained a very high level of attainment in seeing the Dhamma, in many cases. Then, while addressing the Blessed One with his hands still in worshipful Anjali, Seniya said, Blessed Lord, seeing that it is a requirement for me to be on probation for 4 months prior to being granted the full admission and the higher ordination as a bhikkhu, then I will remain on probation for a period of 4 years. So he's showing his commitment. Bhante, I know you said 4 months, but I'm ready to go for 4 years. Let the bhikkhu see me and to test me, because I know I'm set. This is it for me, he's saying. There's no turning back for me. I have passed the point of no return, he's saying. And at the end of those 4 years, Bhante, if the bhikkhus are satisfied with me, let them grant me then the full admission and the higher ordination as a bhikkhu. Thus, the once naked Seniya, who used to identify himself as a dog, received his full admission and the higher ordination as a bhikkhu in the presence of the Blessed One. And from the moment of his ordination, the Venerable Seniya lived alone, secluded and withdrawn from the crowd, energetic, while diligently working to maintain his continuity of mindfulness throughout. Thus, before long, the Venerable Seniya realized for himself directly, with unshakable wisdom and through his own efforts, the supreme goal of the holy life, for the purpose of which good sons of families rightfully and with strong faith in their hearts leave the household life and go forth and become homeless. Now, the Venerable Seniya also, by attaining to and dwelling in that unshakable emancipation of the heart, knew for himself, right there and then, with unparalleled certainty, birth is finally destroyed. The holy life has now been fully lived. Whatever work that had to be done is now completed and done. There is no more return to any state of becoming. Thus, the Venerable Seniya became one of the Arahants. So. Beautiful sutta. I hope you feel the same. Are there any questions, comments? It's good to use, never mind the grotesque imagery, the peculiarities or the particularities of the story or the characters in the sutta. it's good to check to see if you, not if, but to see parts of yourself in these characters. Because we're human, we usually have something. There are some parts of ourselves that these characters also reflect. Parts from the past, present, especially in terms of, do they bring a sense of urgency to the way you're leading your life, the way you are making your choices? Perhaps in terms of your intentional actions. Are the actions you're committing to or committing bright or dark, or a mixture of both? Or are you just tired of all of it? Like the case was with Arahantship, the fourth category of actions. Are you on the wrong freeway or the highway or the road? As far as your relationships go, your practice. So many people are stuck thinking that they are practicing, but they're not practicing at all. But it's like the Simon Says, stupid Simon, basically, Simon says, okay, you just do what the other person says you to do, and you're just repeating it. That is what usually is happening everywhere, but especially in Theravada Buddhism, in practitioners. Whoever comes across the Buddha's teachings, they just pluck this or that principle. They're like, yeah, this will work, yeah, and then they try to lock that in, as it were, and they think they're living the life that the Buddha delineated in the Noble Eightfold Path. And that's what these suttas also must serve for us to check. How do you know? How do you know you're not on the wrong freeway? You look at the GPS. You look at your map. You look at some landmarks. If it says you're supposed to be surrounded by Rocky Mountains, surrounded by different terrain, and then you look around and it's Nebraska, it's flat, grasslands, you're gone somewhere else. If it says you're supposed to be going through a desert, and you look outside and there's fish swimming around you outside your windshield, that means you've drowned. To go ahead and say to yourself, no, I'm in the desert, which is what most people are doing. It's, to say the least, it's irresponsible. As we hope for the best, that is not the path of the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. There's no hoping involved as such. These people had taken charge of their lives. Granted that they were idiotic, they were stupid, they were grotesque, they were deranged to think that, to identify as animals. Something that they were not. Okay, bluntly stated. Nevertheless, they were giving it their all. That's why the Buddha says, if you continue doing this uninterrupted, nonstop, then you will end up in one of two places. Either be a dog or the hell realm. So you could be a school teacher, you could be a housewife, you could be a business person, you could be, I don't know, a politician, you could be a monk. How authentically are you living that? But make sure it is, you are basing what you're doing and you're dedicating your intentional actions to are well-founded. They are based on discerned processing of information, in this case, the Dhamma. action. What's the consequence of my action? If the action is coming out different than what I anticipated, then I have to really go back to the drawing board and look, where am I getting it wrong? If I am unhappy at the end of the day, meanwhile, throughout the day, I've been dedicating myself to this practice, that practice, but I am full of hatred, there's a problem. If you're practicing sila, but at the end of the day, you cannot have metta in your heart, there's a problem. If your meditation is not going deep, there's a problem. Don't blame the teaching. Don't blame the teacher. Don't blame the environment, the climate, none of that. Sometimes it's as simple as some information being misunderstood or misplaced or missing completely. That's why you can't just read one text and say, yeah, I got this, the Dhamma, yeah, and that's it. You go on for years based on what your impressions are of that. Many people are doing that while living and leading adhammic lives. That's a waste of beautiful life. Remember, old kamma and new kamma. New kamma is all about what are you doing with what you have already accumulated. The old kamma. Because time is running out. That's the part about urgency. Samvega is all about getting your goals met, all about taking you to the goal of the holy life, taking you to the climax, the apex of what the Buddha taught. You won't have that without effort. You won't have that without discerning. No Arahant became an Arahant through daydreaming. Never will you come across any Arahant who just happened upon Nibbana. Yeah, oh wow, I am in Nibbana. It doesn't work like that. There's work required. There's a plan that the Buddha laid out. There's a process. So the end, in order for it to be Dhamma, the beginning, the process has to be Dhamma as well. Have to be Dhamma as well. It's like basic chemistry. Components and product, right? If you have H2O at the end as a product, what does that mean? There's 2 atoms of hydrogen plus 1 atom of oxygen, which yields the product, which is a molecule of water, H2O. You won't have haphazardly H3O. It's impossible. You won't have HO, some type of a hydroxide or something. It won't work unless you make it so, unless you mess up the equation by adding or taking out something. So we have to know what we're doing, because you're dealing with this one life, and that's what we need to think about, this one life. Don't think about, oh, there's many lives. Okay, there's many lives, but you've forgotten the dependent arising. Paticca samuppada, that means there's suffering, wailing, despair, anguish, crushing, aging, the fact of sickness, aging, getting old, dying, and before that, seeing those loved ones dying and aging before you get to that point. It's hell. Every life has that, waiting for it in different types of births. Meanwhile, you have this human life. It's such a rare opportunity, and you've done some wonderful work to end up in a human body. Talk about great old kamma that you've done, nobody else. You are responsible for that. What are you doing with it? What is your new kamma about? So I will leave you with those words. And if there are no questions, then will transfer some merits. Akasatha chabo matha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu loka sasanam. Akasatha chabo matha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha chabo matha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May the Triple Gems blessings be with you and with all your loved ones. May you constantly check and place yourself on the right freeway of your life. Always surrounding yourself with good, positive energy under the guidance of the Buddha's teachings, but following the light of the discernment that the Dhamma provides for each and every one of us through the actions that we choose to commit intentionally, each one of us for ourselves. After all, the Dhamma can only be realized by oneself. It's directly understood. It cannot be given to you, that understanding. And what a wonderful thing to be the very first one to ever taste that. You. It's personally realized by the wise, each for oneself, the Buddha says. Pacchatang veditabbo vinyuhi. And that is what I wish upon you. Until next time. Sukhi hotu.